Hello everybody, this is Graeme and today I'm going to be looking at a game called Septima. Now in this game each player takes on the role of a leader of a coven of witches, and you are competing to become the next Septima of the region, or kind of the leader of all the witches of that region. You're going to do this by gathering ingredients, brewing potions, healing the locals, and trying to sway the jury to let your convicted witches go. All the while, of course, you're trying not to be too suspicious and have the witch hunters try and track you down. Now this is all done by card play. You're going to be selecting a card secretly, and then everybody reveals at the same time. If you match another player's card, you'll be able to take the stronger action of your card. But of course, if you match, that means it's going to raise your suspicion a little bit. Now after your action, you're going to roll a die to see whether the witch hunter catches you. If they do, you're going to lose one of the witches from your coven and they're going to be put on trial. Now hopefully, you distract the jury to get them back. Now an interesting theme and a main mechanism that I actually quite enjoy. Now, so I'm sure to like this game. So will this be a game that you'll spend all night by the bonfire playing? Or should just be thrown into the bonfire? Let's get it to the table, see how it's played, then we'll come back for my final thoughts on Septima. Here's Septima set up for 3 players, but I'm only going to show the player components for 1 player, but I will be showing off the full game, but not going through all the rules, just enough for you to get an idea of how the main game works. The season track and the moon phase markers are placed in their spaces, and the hunter pawns are placed on huts 1, 3, and 5, and the extra hunters on the winter and summer spaces on the season track. The potion board is set off to the side with each type of potion, and all the ingredients along with angry citizens are placed off to one side. The 6 patient tokens are shuffled and placed based on the player count. Shuffle the witches and place them in a stack, and place the top one face up in the first trial space. Shuffle the Septima tokens and create a face down stack, then reveal 2 tokens face up on their spots. Randomly choose 2 building tiles and place them on the board, and the ritual board is set off to one side, then separate the spell cards by color, remove the 2 scoring ones, shuffle the rest. Shuffle the 2 scoring cards for each spell type and place them on their space. Then for the rest of that color spell, draw 2 face-up cards. So there should be 3 of each color spell face-up. Each player takes all of their components: cards, loyal citizens, patient markers, and suspicion marker. Each player also draws 1 book of divination, which will show you 4 secret objectives. Each player will then be dealt 4 witch tiles and draft them. That is, keep 1 and pass the others to the player on your left. And instead of keeping the last witch, discard 1 witch to the box so you're left with 3 tiles. Then of those 3, choose 2 to keep, and the last one is returned to the stack of witches. Finally, each player draws 2 prologue cards, and you will overlap them and receive 3 of the top thing, 2 of the middle, and 1 of the bottom. You cannot rotate the cards, only choose which cards on top and which ones on bottom. After the start player is chosen, in reverse player order, place your leader token on an empty space on the board. Each player then can choose 1 regular spell, and places the ritual marker on any of the starting spaces of the ritual track. Now the game is played over a single year made up of 4 seasons. Each season has 4 stages: the prep stage, 5 moon phases, which will consist the bulk of the game while players will be taking their actions, then a trial stage, and finally an end of season stage. During the first season, the autumn season, the prep stage is already done, but normally would involve adding a new witch to the trial, adding angry citizen tokens to patients that were not cured in the previous season, and refilling the patients and reshuffling the Septima tokens. During the moon phase, players will play 5 identical moon phases. First, each player chooses 1 of their remaining cards to play simultaneously, then all players reveal at the same time. Then in turn order, players will activate their cards. Before you activate your card, you do get a quick move, which is optional, and you can move your leader up to 1 space for free. Now the spaces in Septima are the intersections of lines on the board. Then you get to activate your card action. If you're the only player who chose that card, you will do the basic action on the card. If you match with another player, or with a current Septima token, you perform the entire card with a matching bonus. Matching bonuses will either be an also or an instead. If you match with another player, you will have to raise your suspicion by 1. But if you only match with Septima, raise it by 2. If your suspicion ever reaches the top, place 1 of your witches in the second trial space, assuming that you have 2 witches, lower your suspicion by 1, and move your leader anywhere on the board. If you have matched another player or Septima, you can advance on the ritual track as long as the symbol you matched is accessible from your current position on that ritual track. Now let's quickly go through the card actions. The first is collect, which is collect all the lunar ingredients adjacent to your leader. Lunar ingredients are the ones on either side of the current position of the moon token. You can move, which is move your leader up to 3 space and collect 1 ingredient from adjacent space. It can be lunar or non-lunar. You can never end up on the same space as another leader. The brew allows you to brew up to 3 potions from the potion board. Play the cost and take a potion into your supply. Now potions are split into 2 types. There are remedies to treat the sick patients, and there are practical potions, which when brewed will give you 3 points, and a potion that can be used at any time during your turn. The heal card allows you to treat up to 2 adjacent patients. Discard from your supply the matching potion and place the potion on that patient. Then advance on the matching patient track on your board and receive whatever benefit you pass. Multiple players can heal the same patient in one round, but at the end of the round, the patient is removed. Your chant card allows you to lower your suspicion by 2, and this is the only card that if you match with another player or Septima, you do not raise your suspicion. The recruit card allows you to send 1 loyal citizen to the crowd. We'll talk more about the crowd later in the trials, but it has to do with witches being put on trial, and the people in the crowd will decide their fate. Plead means you can send one of your loyal citizens from the crowd into the trial chamber and score 2 points. The Remember card allows you to perform the main ability of any action card you've previously played. You get to do that again. And finally, the Ritual card allows you to move 1 space on the Ritual track, then you move 1 space sideways on that track. As you advance on the Ritual track, you will be able to get more spells, but some of the rows will also have a cost for you to advance. When you do gain a spell, you must take it from the color or colors that your spell marker is currently on. Now, I'm not going to go into spells into too much detail here, but the spells are generally tapped to perform their action, which is going to be printed on the card. But they're not automatically unexhausted at the end of the round. Something must happen to allow you to ready a spell, like advancing on the Ritual track, or if you get the matching bonus when playing your Ritual card, or actually playing the Ritual card while on a shrine. While playing your card, also check your witches to see if they will grant you special abilities, which will modify the actions taken on your card. There are also buildings which might grant you a bonus if you perform certain actions while you're next to them. Once players have finished playing their cards, you check in turn order to see if any player has raised their suspicion for any reason. If you have, and there's an upright hunter in that player's zone, and a zone is a connected spaces of the same color, either gold or bronze. If both of these are true, then you must roll a die and add it to your suspicion. The hunter will move that many steps from its hunt towards your leader. It will ignore all other players' leaders. You can spend a good luck charm to re-roll. Now, if the hunter catches your leader, you must move one of your witches to the second trial space. If you only have 1 witch, don't move it, instead you'll lose 5 points. After the hunter catches you, lower your suspicion by 1 and move your leader any number of spaces. If the hunter did or did not catch you, move it back to its hut. If you did raise suspicion and there is no hunter in the hut in your zone, find the first counterclockwise zone that does have an active hunter and move it to your hut in your zone and set them to inactive. Now, if you did not raise your suspicion, you can ignore this hunter step. Once the hunter phase is done, we go to the end of moon phase. Draw a new Septima token, discard your current action card, activate all hunters, any healed patients come off the board, and move the moon phase marker 1 space. If you move the moon phase marker onto the trial space, then there is a trial at the end of the season. First, move any angry citizens from the board, those would be citizens who have not been treated in the previous seasons, into the bag. Then, add a number of angry citizens based on all player suspicion levels. And finally, put all the citizens from the crowd into the bag. Now you're going to be drawing citizens from the bag to fill up all the spaces on the trial based on the number of players. And at the end, if there are more loyal citizens, then the witch is found innocent. Now the player with the most loyal citizens in the trial gets to add that witch to their coven. They score 3 points and return 2 loyal citizens from the trial or the bag back to their supply. Now if the angry citizens win the trial, then the witch is discarded from the game. And if there is a witch in the second trial chamber, you repeat this process. When you've resolved all trials, place all the loyal citizens back into the crowd, and each player in turn order can decide if they wish to do crowd picks. Depending on how many loyal citizens you have, you can do as many different crowd picks as it says here. If you do a crowd pick, then you must return 1 loyal citizen to the supply, irrespective of how many crowd picks you performed. After the trial, there's an end of season step. You're going to shuffle and redraw patient tiles, advance the season marker. If this unlocks a hunter, you place it in the lowest numbered empty hut. Reset the moon phase marker. Players return all of their cards to their hand, and the start player marker moves. Finally, move the topmost cards to the bottom row and reveal 3 new spell cards. Now the game ends after the 4th trial. You do not get crowd picks during this final round. And to score, you get points for having loyal citizens left in the crowd. You score your Book of Divinations, and you can only score an objective if you have a witch. So, if you only have 2 witches left in your coven, you can only score 2 of the objectives from your Book of Divination, even if you have achieved all 4 of those objectives. You also score points for each column in your patient track, and you also score 6 points for each complete row in the patient track. You score for leftover good luck charms, potions, ingredients, and crystals. And the player with the most points is the winner. Let's get back to see what I thought about Septima. Let's start like I normally do on theme and components. The theme in this one is very well done. Everything is kind of tied to the theme and has thematic elements to it. It does make the gameplay more cohesive, and because of that. Why you're moving to collect ingredients? Well, of course, you want to make potions to cure the sick townsfolk. Why you're sending your loyal people to the trials? Well, honestly, there's going to be a witch hunt trial, so you want to be making sure that the jury is stacked in your favor. Even the suspicion makes sense. Too many people doing suspicious things together kind of raises everyone in suspicion level. So though not a novel theme, still an enjoyable one that is definitely well integrated with the gameplay. Now for the components. I quite like them kind of all in. I really like the art throughout the game. All the components are good quality. The rulebook does a very decent job of explaining the game, if it's a bit on the long side, and the process of how the game works. I really like the screen-printed player pieces. Really the only complaint I have, and of course this is just a minor thing, is actually the size of the game. It is a table hog, especially when you get that ritual and potions board going. The main board definitely could have been smaller because you really don't need all that space. But like I said, it's just a minor thing. So on to the gameplay. The game is deceptively straightforward considering the length of that rulebook. You're collecting ingredients to make potions to cure patients. The other main thing you're doing is sending your loyal citizens to the trials. But you only have so many loyal citizens, so that can run out, or you're not going to be doing that every single turn. Now the game does encourage you to discuss with other players what you're planning to do. Not that this is a co-op game, but maybe beneficial to all or two or more people to play the same action at the same time to get that bonus action. And if you lie about what you're going to do, well, there's kind of no real downside, as you can still perform your basic action on your card, and you don't raise your suspicion level. I do like that there are the Septima tokens, so if you really want to, match with someone, you can always match with Septima if it's the right side up. Often you can see that Septima token, let's say, is the brew, for example, but you need to collect ingredients first, so you feel like you're one round behind Septima, but if you can get in sync with Septima, it works out well. Again, it's not a huge deal, as I always treated these things, both the Septima and matching players, as strictly a bonus. If I didn't get to them, oh well, it would have been nice to have, but I can still do the action I want to do. Now the basics of the gameplay are pretty straightforward. The gameplay of moving around, collecting ingredients, brewing potions, and treating patients is kind of stuff we've seen before. Maybe not with this theme, but those actions are the same. It's good, solid gameplay. But like I said, we've seen this many times before. So what sets this game apart? Well, there are the hunters, the trials, and the spells in that ritual board. And unfortunately, none of them really worked well for me. First, the hunters. What I thought would be a critical part of the game, trying to hide from the hunter and manipulate the board so maybe you can send the hunter to someone else, almost became a monotonous aspect of the game. Several times during the game, you are far enough away from the hunter and with a low enough suspicion that makes the whole piece of that game moot. Yes, you can still get captured. And when you do lose a witch, you're severely hampered. And there's no way that you want that to happen near the end of the game because you're going to be losing the ability to score points. So you spend a lot of the second half of the game just making sure you're far enough away or making sure that your suspicion's low enough so you won't get caught. This mechanism really didn't hit the mark for me. The die rolls were too random and you were almost always planning for the worst case scenario. So you just kind of ended up avoiding the hunters. And I'm not sure what that really added to the gameplay. It reduced your play area or just making sure that you ended up in a section with no hunters so that you wouldn't have to roll for them. Now for the trials, I found them slightly more interesting, but almost maybe more frustrating than the hunters. If you do lose a witch to the hunter, you try and stack the bag in your favor. But there's no guarantee that the witch will be found innocent, and even if they are, maybe you're not going to win it. I've rarely seen a trial where it was obvious, even before you start to pull meeples from the bag, that the witch was innocent. There's always quite a number of angry crowd members in there, especially at the higher player counts. And this means that it takes a concerted effort to stack the bag in your favor. And if it doesn't work out, you've wasted a season, and there's only 4 seasons to the game. And my last issue with the game is kind of the feeling that it's unbalanced. Some of the witches are clearly more useful than others. And that goes to the same thing with the spells as well. I've seen many a player have a spell or spells that they just never used for the entire game. And there are other games where someone gets a spell or a witch and they're used every single round, or the spells every time they untap it, they tap it right again just because of how powerful they are. The ritual board, although interesting, I'm not sure what it adds to the gameplay. So what it comes down to for me is the game kind of straddles this line, but it doesn't fit on either side. It's too light with too much randomness and kind of too unbalanced for me to say this is a deep strategic game. But I wanted to put that aside and say, okay, maybe I shouldn't be approaching it as such. Maybe I should treat it like a light or a mid-weight game. In that case, it's too long and there are far too many little fiddly rules and things to remember that can come back and bite you for that. So would I recommend this game? Ultimately, no, I don't think I would. If you wanted a game on the lighter side, there are others that I would recommend before Septima, which are cleaner and easier to kind of get to the table. And the same if you want something a little heavier side. There are ones that I recommend before Septima. Again, if you want something heavier, I would recommend something with less randomness. So I'm not sure who this game is for. Now, I really did like the whole production of this game, from the components to the theme. And I feel that the basics of the gameplay are solid, but we've seen them before. Now, I did like that the game does encourage you to talk about the actions you're going to do to try and get some synergy and some table talk going, or maybe just want to listen and maybe piggyback on what someone else said they're going to do. Now, I did like that they wanted to add more to the gameplay. So they added the hunters and the trials to the ritual track and spells to try and separate it from the pack. But unfortunately, for me, what they added to make the game kind of stand out and be separated from the rest of the games like this just didn't work for me. I disliked the randomness of many of the elements of the game. The hunters I felt were almost a non-issue and really didn't add much to the gameplay itself. They didn't make the game more interesting. Now the trials were interesting in concept, but in practice were not as enjoyable as I had hoped. And the spells and ritual felt like they wanted to make the game more immersive or more complex, but then forgot that this is not what the base game is. The base game is pretty straightforward in your actions that you're doing. So overall, I'm going to give Septima a 6 out of 10. This is one that just didn't work for me, and I really can't see myself coming back to play this one. And I'm sure there are several of you watching who love this game, or who may enjoy this game if you play it. So unfortunately, for me, I didn't enjoy it. Other players that I played with did enjoy it. I just wasn't one of them. But that's it for the moment. Until next time, thanks for watching.
Hey folks, thanks for watching another one of our videos. If you like our videos, if you like our channel, you would love to game with us at one of our conventions. Check out Dice Tower Cruise, Dice Tower East, and Dice Tower West. Fantastic conventions where we play games with wonderful people, a humongous library, and lots of other events and stuff. Also, don't forget to check out our channel, like and subscribe. I'm Tom Bassel.